is, well, yeah, the final thing I want to do is talk about what I talked about yesterday at the close of the show. And it was in relation to Charlie Kirk. And it needs to be said. And I'm going to say it more and more and more and more moving forward until it gets through fucking people's skulls. Okay. So if you go back, and I did this exercise yesterday in time, and you look at all of the things that Charlie said leading up to in the past 2 years about Israel, okay? I want you to hear some of them because I have my own beliefs, and I've had my own beliefs since the day he died. So, and I'm sick of hearing people like Candace fucking Owens and Tucker Carlson and even people on this app, right? Blame Israel for everything. I'm fucking tired of it, okay? So, let's listen to this, okay? Yes, it is ruining a legacy, 100%. So, after October 7th, 2023, right? Charlie Kirk show, he questioned how Israel's intelligence and security apparatus missed the Hamas attack, right? That's a fair question, sure, okay? He also talked about fortifying the countries in the world and asking how the CIA, Mossad, and Israeli intelligence just missed all of this, right? And still said that Israel had the right to defend themselves. Interesting that he would say that, right? All right, moving on. In fact, it was more about like skepticism about Israeli security failure than any opposition, by the way, to Israel. On October 12th, he was on a PBD podcast, and he talked about this stand down order, right? That there was a stand down order, and he was upset about it and talking about it, speculating that the government may have double crossed or been double crossed by some bad actors, right? October 12th, later on, he said that he was referring to removing the millions of Palestinians from Gaza and talking about that ethnic cleansing, right? Saying that Israel's hard right government now had a mandate and said that they were going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And he framed this as something that raised some serious questions. Again, fair comment. On the 23rd, he was discussing the church bombing criticism. Again, very normal question. Many of us did, actually. Questioned that. Thank you so much, Simon. On May 2nd, he wrote a letter to Netanyahu, okay? And he said that Israel was losing support amongst the conservative MAGA voters. Now, I find that interesting. Why would he write him that if he was so upset with Israel, right? That they were losing them. He wrote that he felt he was defending Israel in public more than your own government, right? Interesting words. He said Israel was losing the information war and called it a 5-alarm fire. He said the status quo was not working and that Israel was getting crushed on social media. If he didn't care about Israel, why would he write that letter? Again, this was on May 2nd of 2025, just a few months before he was killed. Just ask yourselves that. Let's keep going. May 3rd, there was a post about opposing HR 867, which was a bill that was tied to boycotts of Israel, right? He claimed it would criminalize private boycotts of Israel, carry huge fines and prison time, and play into growing narratives that Israel is running the U.S. government. Again, he was concerned about Israel. This is again May 3rd, just a few months before he was killed. June 2025, Israel-Iran war. Of course, we all know his feelings on the war. And I have said this repeatedly, and I'll say it again. He has the right to feel the way he did. I will always support Charlie Kirk for the man he was and what he believed. I just did not agree with him on his stance on this war. And as I've said very, very specifically, he also doesn't have a fucking political science degree, and I do. So we have a differing view, but I still supported him. Let's talk about what he said, okay? And he would tell you that was not his field. So on Newsmax, he warned that Iran was historically difficult to defeat and said that not even the Romans could defeat Persia. He wasn't lying, okay? Tucker later said that Kirk had privately urged Trump not to launch a war with Iran. But that's Tucker saying this, okay? Anyway, it's not an anti-Israeli directly type of argument, but it was against the U.S. being pulled into a war that was aligned with Israel, okay? But he wasn't against Israel. Let's just pay attention here. So August comes, and he has the Megyn Kelly appearance, okay? And Kirk said that people in the pro-Israel camp were pushing away allies by accusing critics of anti-Semitism. Again, he said he had a bulletproof resume defending Israel, but felt he had less ability to criticize the Israeli government than Israelis themselves did, okay? He warned that the hostile actions or reactions to criticism could weaken Israel's advocates, okay? Again, I don't see anything wrong with that. That was August, 1 month before he was killed. And here we have the September 9th interview with Ben Shapiro, where he questioned whether conservatives should also ask questions or question the media narratives about Israel, right? The way that they question media narratives about CV-19, Ukraine, lockdowns, and the border. I don't disagree with him. He also raised the accusation that Israel wanted to ethnically cleanse Gaza again and asked Shapiro what Israel's actual endgame was, right? He criticized Netanyahu's reported line that someone can't be MAGA if they are anti-Israel, saying he did not like that framing. Again, trying to basically protect Israel. He may not have agreed with Netanyahu, neither did I, but he certainly, oh, wait for it, Danny boy, because it's going to get real good here in a minute. So make sure you're listening. So interesting if they are anti-Israel, okay? He's not wrong. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Stato. I appreciate that, hun. So just a few days before September 10th, okay, this private WhatsApp message that was later confirmed, okay? Kirk complained that some Jewish donors were pressuring him over Israel and said that they were playing into all the stereotypes. He wrote that he would not be bullied and said this was pushing him to leave the pro-Israel cause. Turning Point USA later confirmed the messages were authentic, which, while of course allies said he was venting frustration rather than, of course, abandoning Israel. Interesting. So now, to this point, I don't hear anything that would make me think that Israel would be upset about that. I mean, upset, worried maybe, but not enough to want him dead, okay? So now, again, and I'm not even saying this, the government said the day it happened, the day he was shot, there was a article that came out or a mention, a comment that came out and said quite literally that, and I'm going to tell you, somebody out of our federal government mentioned the word foreign entity. That was the only time they'd ever mentioned it, was that day, okay? So now let's talk about this. May 14th, 2024, okay? 2 years prior, or a year prior, over a year prior to his death, okay? Charlie Kirk show. Kirk framed this episode around mass migration and Muslim assimilation. In the discussion, he asked how the West should view Islamic mass migration. Said the Muslim world largely sees Christianity charity as weakness, describing Islam as a religion founded on conquest, and said Europe was becoming a conquered continent. The episode summary said Islamic migrants entering the West saw Christian virtues as weaknesses and a means to conquer their enemies. The title of the show was How Islam Really Views the West. That was on May 14th, 2024. Now that's pretty serious. March 22nd, 2025, he starts getting massively intense on the number of times he starts talking about Islam. Thought Crime, episode 77. Can Islam and the West coexist? This was a Charlie Kirk show centered on whether Islam and the West could exist, period. On April 10th, okay, and 11th, 2025, is Mohammedanism compatible with the West? The official Charlie Kirk page dated this episode April 10th. Podcast listing showed that publication on April 11th. But it said that Mohammedanism is the episode framing, and it was growing in the West, and asked whether it was compatible with Western and Christian values or naturally in conflict, okay? April 30th, same month, Charlie Kirk show, segment on Epic City in Texas. Kirk criticized the proposed Muslim community in Texas. He said Muslims were trying to build a dedicated Islamic area, and their worldview was toxic and aimed at destroying the West. said that large Islamic areas were a threat to America, said free speech and free expression were not Islamic values, and said Islam had conquest values. May 22nd, a month later, less than a month, 3 weeks later, Charlie Kirk Show. My thoughts on the UK after debating at Oxford and Cambridge. Kirk argued that macro-Islam is incompatible with Western values. He said the U.S. Constitution was incongruent with Islam and could not exist with it. He gave 3 reasons. He claimed Islam does not believe in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, or separation of mosque and state. He also said he could not identify a Western country that became more Islamic and also became freer and happier. June 2nd, just a week later, The Kirk Show. Islam, incompatible with the West, incompatible with civilization. The episode title itself obviously framed it as incompatible. The episode described Kirk reacting to an attack by an Islamic radical, asking why some pro-immigration Americans seemed to have a death wish. Interesting. June 24th, not even, same month, guys. Charlie Kirk Show. Kirk said, oh my gosh, thank you, Shadow. Kirk said he had been warning about the rise of Islam, despite the backlash, and said Islam was not compatible with Western civilization. This quote was compiled by The Guardian, by the way. Also, June 24th, same day, and the